I don't know if you've ever heard of the name Justin Sun. Justin Sun is the founder of Tron, which is a company here in China that does cryptocurrency. He's a very young entrepreneur, I think less than 30 and already a billionaire. But back in 2019, he won the bid to have lunch with Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, you might have heard of, one of the richest men in the world. Warren Buffett does this every year as a fundraiser for one of his charities to have lunch with him. And whoever bids on eBay with the highest bid gets to have a 1-hour lunch with Warren Buffett. And so Justin Sun won the winning bid back in 2019. And the bid to have lunch with Warren Buffett came out to be $4.5 million. $4.5 million. That's 30 million renminbi. And so, I was wondering, like, who would pay, 30 million renminbi for one lunch? And Justin Sun, after the lunch, people were just curious, like, why did you want to have lunch with them? And so Justin basically said he's been to school, he's been to some of the top universities in China, been to business school, had a lot of great professors, but he wanted to learn from somebody that actually has real life experience. He wants to learn not just theory, not just from professors, but he wants to learn from somebody that actually came from, like Warren Buffett, from modest beginnings to becoming one of the most wealthiest men in the world. And so that's why he wanted to do it. He wanted to hear from somebody that has actually been there. That's actually been where Justin is at right now. And so that's why people are wanting to bid millions of dollars just to have lunch with Warren Buffett. There are a lot of people out there that have a lot of different views of the afterlife. There's been books, there's been movies, there's been a lot of stories. You might have even heard about people's maybe near-death experience, or maybe even some people claiming to be Christians on what happens in the afterlife, what happens after you die. But I want to take a look at two people that actually did die. They didn't come back, but Jesus is telling the story, because Jesus, being God and omniscient, he not just sees the here and the now, but he sees even after we die. And so here Jesus tells us this story about two people that have actually died. They've actually been there and actually there now. And here he wants us to learn from these two individuals about the lessons about those that have died. What exactly happens when we die? Death is a fact. That death is a fact of life. 100 years from now, every single person listening to this will be dead. Guaranteed. Over 40 million people die every year. That's 6,000 people every day. So from the beginning of this sermon to now, there's already been a couple of hundred people that have died. So when the Bible talks about death, we need to listen, especially when Jesus talks about it. So here Jesus wants us to learn these lessons from the dead, who are actually dead and actually experience what life really is like after death. So here, let's take a look at Luke chapter 16. Very fascinating passage. This is not some parable. This is actually real people. They actually name the people here, Lazarus and Abraham. So here, these are people that God wants us to learn from. So let's take a look. We're going to read some of these verses here. I want to start off by understanding that the first lesson we need to learn here is that we need to have a vision of heaven. That's the first lesson, is we need to have a vision of heaven. Look with me in verse 19. Jesus says, "Now there was a rich man, and he habitually dressed in purple and fine linen, joyously living in splendor every day. And a poor man, name was Lazarus, was laid at his gate, covered with sores, and longing to be fed with the crumbs which were falling from the rich man's table. Besides, even the dogs were coming and licking his wounds, his sores. Now the poor man died And he was carried away by the angels to Abraham's bosom, Abraham's side. And the rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, the rich man lifted up his eyes, being in torment, and saw Abraham far away and Lazarus at his side. Here we see, again, I want to take a look at this vision of heaven. A lot of people have these really weird ideas of what heaven is going to be like. I've talked to some people that said, "Oh, I can't wait till I get to heaven." I said, "What are you looking forward to?" "Oh, I'm going to be able to eat all of the food I want to eat and not get fat. I'm going to have, a six-pack ab. I'm going to be beautiful or handsome." And I was like, "Okay, well, I mean, it doesn't say anything like that here." Or some people think like, well, heaven is just a place where, we're just going to float around in the clouds and play a harp or something like that. Just something weird things. But here, we need to understand, I want us to walk away with is here we see this rich man and this poor man that died. The rich man, he dies, and we can assume that this rich man probably was Jewish. I mean, this is a Jewish culture that Jesus is talking about here. And because of that, and because of his wealth, probably people assume that he was very blessed by God, probably even very religious. And we can also easily assume that this person had a funeral. This rich man had a wonderful funeral. Probably all of his relatives were there, probably his family, and probably even dignitaries were there. I would imagine that there were speeches that were made at the funeral, just like there are speeches made in funerals today, talking about how wonderful this rich man was, probably talked about how he was blessed by God, because in those days people associated wealth, money, with God's blessing. So if you're wealthy, that means God is with you. That's what a lot of people erroneously thought. But here, 1 second after this rich man dies, he got the strange feeling that something was wrong. He wasn't in heaven, but rather he was in hell. In verse 23, in Hades, he lifted up his eyes, being in torment, and saw Abraham far away and Lazarus at his side. So this poor man, beggar, living in the street. Actually, he was living right at the outside the door of, or the house of the rich man, begging for food every day. And this person dies, and he is in heaven. And so here, I want us to understand that first and foremost, that heaven is our home. Heaven is our home. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 18. Paul says, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. To be absent from the body is to be present, to be home with the Lord. And here it's very important when the Bible describes heaven, it doesn't describe it as some place that we're on billowy clouds or some figment of our imagination. Heaven is a place, a real place. And here, heaven is a place where everything we love is there. Everything we cherish is there. Everything that is valuable is there. And here, God wants us to understand that heaven is our home. We were made as Christians. Earth is not our home. If I were to ask you, where's your hometown? You'd probably say where your hometown is. If people ask me in China, where's my home? I say it's in Los Angeles. And when I'm in the US, people ask me, where's my home? I say it's in China, it's in Shanghai. So it depends on who's asking me. But I've lived in Shanghai for 15 years. It was just kind of a long time. Some of you have lived here a lot longer. Some of you have lived here a lot shorter. But we all live here now, and we know, Shanghai is our home. But heaven for the Christian, we're going to live there a whole lot longer than 15 years. It's going to be for all eternity. That is our home. It's a place where earth, the world, the Bible describes as we are, as Christians, foreigners. We are aliens. We are expats. We're just kind of passing through. This is not our home. Heaven is our home. And it's a place that is much bigger, much greater than here on earth. When my wife and I lived in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area, we went to this one aquarium called the Monterey Bay Aquarium, And I was very excited because the Monterey Bay Aquarium, one of the things that it does is not only have a lot of fish, but it also has a rescue program. So they rescue sea life. And one of the things that they rescued was like a 5 or 6 meter great white shark. It was the largest shark in captivity. And they rescued it because it was dying in the ocean from something. And they rescued it and brought it to the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And so I was excited when I heard we're going to get to see an apex predator, the great white shark. There's nothing more, nothing that really hunts after the great white shark. Great white sharks hunt after everything else. So I'm thinking like, wow, I'm going to see, a great white shark. And I've always, ever since a kid watching the movie Jaws, I've always been afraid of sharks. And so I wanted to see what does a 6 meter shark look like. And so we got to Monterey Bay Aquarium and I was excited. I was expecting this, swimming through the ocean, hunting, and when they're feeding it, like, I don't know, feeding it other fish or dolphins or whatever, is going to attack it and stuff like that. And I was excited to see what this great white shark was going to look like. And when I got to the tank, it was a huge tank.